I'd like to introduce myself. I am Mrs. Marlo White, and it's a name that I'm very proud of. When my husband asked me to marry him to change my name, he said, "There's one thing I want to change about you." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Your name." So I said, "That's great." I said, "Yes," and from then on, I've been Mrs. Marlo White. The business started really like a love story. We were so much in love with each other, but here Marlo came from a very famous uniform family. His grandfather came from Yugoslavia back in 1873, and he landed in Pensacola, Florida. He was in the Austrian Navy. He'd really served enough time, and when he would get back to Yugoslavia, at that time, he would been discharged, so he decided to stay in Pensacola. At that time, it was a big shipping port. They also had the Army things. They had the Fort Barrancas, and it was a very busy area, but Pensacola was probably maybe around 1,500 people. He could speak several languages. He was very talented in that. But he couldn't get a job. But he was having a very difficult time to work. So he finally landed a job as a stevedore, loading and unloading the ships. His name was Biskupovich, but when they wanted him, they would call him White. "Hey, White, come here. Hey, White, this and that." So he legally later changed his name, but he started getting items to sell to the sailors and people that would, land in different ships from different countries. And being very successful at that, he opened his shop in Pensacola in 1878. So the history of the military uniform business goes back a long way. Marlo's father took over the business after his father was killed. He was shot by an employee that had been stealing from the company, and his grandfather called him in to tell him that, "I don't want to discharge you because it would put shame on your family." That showed that he cared about him and cared about the family. But this fellow was so ashamed, he went out and got drunk, came back with a gun and shot him. It was a very sad deal. So Marlo's father continued the uniform business. When World War II started, Marlo he loved the flying. They started the aviation school in Pensacola, Florida, and the Edward White Company designed their uniforms and sold them all their uniforms there. And Marlo, when he was 16, he took flying lessons from a retired warrant officer, and he soloed this Waco 10 plane. Well, when World War II started, he knew he was going to be the best pilot in the whole world. So he went over to join the Navy to be a pilot, and they gave him 4 chances. He would be so excited. He couldn't pass what they call a Snyder test. His blood pressure would surge. So he was devastated because he thought he was the best in the world. He had a lot of confidence in himself. Marlo was quite a person. Marlo was the type of a man that once you met him, you'd never forget him. He was that way. Well, so he continued working in the business with his father in Pensacola. Well, in Jacksonville, Florida, they opened a naval base. So he decided that he would start his own company and go to Jacksonville, Florida, and sell there. And so he had a business that was just right outside of Jacksonville Naval Base. He also had a big dry cleaning company along with it, and it was thriving. He had a wonderful business. He sold a lot of people that he remembered very well. He sold Joe Kennedy, the young Kennedy that was killed in the war. he became friends with him, and he would come in his shop every Saturday, and they would visit and talk. He never forgot that. It was a great memory in his life. Marlowe related to his customers. He loved them, and most of them all, you know, was a personal thing with him. But in 1955, there was a huge storm in Jacksonville, Florida, big lightning storm. And it hit his building, and he lost everything. It burned it to the ground. He had nothing. So Marlowe was just really devastated. He was there. He had very little insurance because he was out of the city limits. So he had maybe a third of the insurance to cover what he owed. And then it used most of the money that he had trying to pay off as many people as he could. He later received a call from a friend of his that was in Fort Walters, Texas, as an instructor. The Army had just started their helicopter program. So he drove out there, and he measured them all for uniforms. He went to Baltimore, and he contacted a company that would make the uniforms for him and carry the accounts and just pay him a commission on each sale, which that helped Marlowe get a start and a foundation in order to travel and make money. Well, at that point, he decided that traveling to the Army bases was the thing that he wanted to do. So he made contracts with the different AAFES organizations from one post to the other across the country.